Dad was in charge of my trust fund. Grandpa left me, but he bought stocks with it and gave me leftovers. My grandfather's will was read on a rainy afternoon, and I laughed when the lawyer said I'd inherited $1 million, because who leaves a fortune to a 22-year-old who still forgets to pay their phone bill? Then I saw my dad's face, pale as the storm clouds outside, and my laughter died. By the time I realized he'd been managing my trust fund, the money was mostly gone, gambled on stocks that tanked, leaving me with scraps and a father I barely recognized. I'm Ethan Carter, and this is the story of how I lost a fortune I never really had and found something I didn't know I needed. Growing up, Grandpa was my hero. He'd built Carter Industries from a single hardware store into a regional empire, all with a grin and a handshake. He wasn't just rich, he was wise. The kind of man who'd slip you a 20 and a life lesson in the same breath. When he died 2 years ago, I was gutted, but the trust fund he left me felt like his final hug, a safety net for his reckless grandson. Dad, though, was named trustee. "It's for your own good, Ethan," he'd said, his voice firm but his eyes dodging mine. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my dad. Fast forward to that rainy day in the lawyer's office. Mr. Hargrove, Grandpa's attorney, slid a folder across the table. "Your trust fund's current balance," he said, his tone clipped. I opened it, expecting a number with lots of zeros. Instead, it was $47,392. I blinked, thinking it was a typo. "There's supposed to be $1 million, I said, my voice cracking. Hargrove glanced at Dad, who was staring at his shoes. "Your father made some investment decisions," Hargrove said. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on a staircase. Dad had taken my inheritance, my future, and bet it on the stock market. And he'd lost. I confronted him that night in his study, the same room where Grandpa used to tell me stories about hard work and honor. Dad sat behind his desk, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "I was trying to grow it for you," he said, his voice shaky. "Tech stocks were hot. I thought I could double it, maybe triple it." His eyes pleaded for understanding, but all I felt was rage. "You thought," I shouted. "It wasn't your money." He flinched, and for a moment, I saw the man who taught me to ride a bike, now crumbling under the weight of his own mistakes. But my anger didn't care. I stormed out, vowing to get answers. The next week was a blur of digging through financial records. I wasn't a numbers guy. Art school was more my speed, but I learned fast. Dad had poured the trust fund into volatile tech startups, chasing quick profits. Most of the stocks crashed during a market dip last year. He'd sold what was left to cover his losses, leaving me with the dregs. I found emails between him and his broker, full of phrases like high risk, high reward, and trust me. This is the next big thing. Each one felt like a knife twist. He hadn't just lost my money, he'd betrayed Grandpa's trust, and mine. I could have sued him. Hargrove said I had a case breach of fiduciary duty, reckless mismanagement. But every time I pictured Dad in a courtroom, I saw Mom's face, already lined with worry from years of keeping our family together. She didn't know the full story yet, and I wasn't sure I could break her heart like that. Instead, I went back to Dad's study, this time with a plan. "I want the truth," I said, calmer but no less firm. "All of it." He told me everything. After Grandpa's death, Carter Industries hit hard times. Dad, desperate to keep the company afloat, started dipping into my trust fund. "I thought I could replace it before you noticed," he said, tears in his eyes. "I was trying to save what Grandpa built. It wasn't just greed, it was pride. The same pride that made Grandpa a legend and Dad a shadow trying to live up to him. I wanted to hate him, but I saw a man drowning in his own failures, not a villain. The hardest part was realizing Grandpa wasn't perfect either. His will had put Dad in charge without safeguards, assuming his son would carry his legacy flawlessly. Maybe Grandpa's faith in Dad was his own kind of recklessness. I spent nights replaying memories of them: Grandpa's booming laugh, Dad's quiet nods, always in his father's shadow. I wondered if Dad's gamble was less about money and more about proving he could be the man Grandpa believed in. I didn't forgive him right away. Trust, once broken, doesn't snap back like a rubber band, but I started seeing Dad as more than the guy who'd screwed me over. He was flawed, human, and stuck in a cycle of trying to measure up. I decided to rebuild, not just my bank account, but our family. I took a job at Carter Industries, starting at the bottom, learning the business Grandpa had built. Dad and I worked together, awkwardly at first, but we really talked for the first time in years. He shared stories of Grandpa's early days, the risks he took, the mistakes he made. It humanized them both, and somehow it made the loss sting less. The trust fund's leftovers became my seed money. I invested carefully with help from a financial advisor who wasn't my dad. It wasn't a million, but it was a start. More importantly, I found purpose in the work, in carrying forward what Grandpa began. Not just his money, but his values, hard work, integrity, second chances. Dad stepped back from the company, letting me take the lead. It wasn't easy for him, but I saw pride in his eyes. Not for himself, but for me. Looking back, I lost a fortune but gained something harder to quantify. Family isn't just blood. It's the messy, painful work of forgiving and rebuilding. Dad's mistake cost me $1 million, but it taught me who I could be when the safety net was gone. I still wonder if I did the right thing. Sparing him a lawsuit, choosing family over justice. What would you have done? Share your thoughts. Where do you draw the line between right and wrong when it's your own blood? Entered.